Meanwhile, as the conflict between Israeli forces and the Hamas group escalates as we speak, the Arab world has rallied their support behind Palestinians. And this comes in hours after the Gaza militant group struck deep within the Israeli territory, launching over 7,500 rockets and armed men breaking through Israelis' defenses. In Yemen, thousands of participants took part in a rally to show support for the Hamas group's Operation Al-Aqsa flood storm. As you can see on your screens, these visuals where Yemenis were seen waving Palestinian flags and chanting in support of Gaza, Al-Aqsa Mosque and also the Hamas group. Similar scenes were also witnessed in Kuwait, where a sea of people took to the streets to show their support for their Palestinian brothers. Take a listen as to what some of the demonstrators had to say.
خرج الشعب اليمني اليوم تأييدا ونصرة ومشاركة لإخواننا المجاهدين المقاومين في فلسطين وتأييدا لهذه العملية واتخاذا للموقف الطبيعي لهذا الشعب العظيم الشعب المؤمن.
People of Iraq also showed their staunch support for the Palestinian cause, celebrating the Hamas strike. Iraq's extremist group organized a rally through Baghdad to celebrate the attack on Israel.
اليوم خرجت المقاومة الإسلامية كتائب وحزب الله بمسيرة انطلاقية في شوارع بغداد بمناسبة الانتصار الذي حدثت في المقاومة الإسلامية في فلسطين على العدوان الصهيوني اليوم الذي تحقق بفضل دماء الشهداء وأن هذا النصر الإلهي.
Earlier on Saturday, thousands of Palestinians in West Bank marched down the streets to celebrate the Hamas attack as well. The Palestinians say that the closure amounts to collective punishment for Israel's years-long occupation of their territory. Not only this, many Palestinians were seen celebrating the attack, jumping on top of destroyed tanks belonging to the Israeli army. And for more on this, we are now being joined live by Lieutenant Colonel Daniel L. Davis, who is a military expert and senior fellow for defense priorities, and he's joining us live from Virginia. Thank you so much for joining us on WION, Colonel.
Thanks for having me.
Right, Colonel Davis, it has been 24 hours since Hamas launched a surprise attack on Israel. Netanyahu has launched Operation Iron Swords and launched intense airstrikes. But Colonel Davis, Tel Aviv's ability to retaliate, will that be hampered by the presence of scores of hostages in the hands of Hamas group?
Well, it'll be hampered by quite a number of things, not the least of which is the large number of Israeli civilians which have been captured and are now being held in all kinds of areas, apparently throughout the Gaza Strip, and that's going to definitely hamper, especially any large-scale air attacks. I think it's going to make that very difficult for Israeli defense forces. But also we have to understand that this has been planned for quite a long time, meticulous planning and very good execution, and how it's especially in their surprise that they launch. And that also implies that they have a good plan for an Israeli incursion. So anytime you fight in a built-up area and in cities, you're going to have problems with civilians, but there's also going to be probably ambushes and all kinds of booby traps. So this is going to be a very, very difficult situation for the Israeli Defense Forces if they have to go into the Gaza Strip.
Right, Colonel, you speak of how well planned this attack was. My next question is pertaining to that very point you made there. Now, Israel now a nation in shock and driven by a new sense of national unity, perhaps. But in the months previous, there have been deep divisions over the judicial reforms, with some of the reserve Israeli soldiers staying at home. My question to you is that, was that possibly seen as a sign of weakness by Hamas, that maybe this is the right time to strike?
I think they may have been incidental to it, because anytime you have an operation of this complexity, where it was literally air, land, and sea, and in 20 different locations out there, these things have to have been planned and rehearsed for many, many months, possibly even years. So I don't think that anything that's happened in the near term had any impact on the operation itself, but may have just been a convenient issue on the day of launch.
Right, absolutely. There are also speculation regarding the timing of the attack when there was a peace deal which was struck between Israel, US and Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I do. I think that was a big motivator for the Hamas to launch, because I think that they're afraid that they're going to get left behind. And if there's a rapprochement between Israel and Saudi Arabia or any of the other Arab states, that they're afraid, I think, the Hamas, is that they're going to get left behind or negotiated away and not get their freedom. And I think this was as much a notice and a signal to Arab regimes as it was to Israel. But I think you see a lot of frustration on the part of the Palestinians, and a lot of desperation. And people sometimes who are desperate take really bad and dangerous activities. And I think that's what we're seeing here. And now there's lots of bloodshed for it, and there's no easy answer for how this is going to get resolved.
Right, Colonel. Now, Israel is also known to have a strong and a robust air defense system known as the Iron Dome. Then how was Hamas able to inflict this colossal level of damages?
Yeah, because what Hamas has learned through trial and error, and who physically taken into this, is that when you saturate an area with rockets, that any defense system, even as good as the Iron Dome it is, and it's probably one of the best in the world, it can still be overwhelmed with sheer numbers when they come in. And in the last report I saw, there's been up to 5,000 rockets fired. And, it takes a lot of, as we're seeing throughout the Russia-Ukraine war, it takes a lot of missiles to knock down a missile and a rocket. And so that's the reason why, because Hamas has saturated certain areas so that the Iron Dome just can't keep track of it.
Right, Colonel Davis, my last question to you now. Mossad, which is Israel's intelligence agency, is one of the best in the world, but it was clearly caught off guard on Saturday in the latest attack by Hamas, and so was the United States of America.
Yeah, that's really frankly kind of puzzling, because there were lots of signs in September that something big was coming. The Israeli Defense Forces actually seized a shipment of explosives that were being smuggled out of the Gaza Strip area, and they went on full alert. The Hamas itself actually conducted physical training exercises where they rehearsed many of these kinds of activities that they're doing, like going into cities and other kinds of open field training exercises like any other army does. And somehow those signs were missed. And when it actually got launched here, 24 hours ago, it just completely took Israel by surprise. And that's a big surprise to me, and I think to most in the world, that Mossad was caught that completely off guard.
Absolutely, Colonel. Thanks very much for joining us on WION and sharing your insights on this. We'll, of course, be tracking this very closely right here.
Always my pleasure. Thanks for having me.